Thank you for joining us today for Armchair Historians. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cannon. Armchair Historians is a Belgian Rabbit production. Stay up to date with us through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Wherever you listen to your podcast, that is where you'll find us. You can also find us at armchairhistorians.com. Armchair Historians is an independent, commercial-free podcast. If you would like to support the show, you can buy us a cup of coffee through Ko-fi, or you can become a subscribing member through Patreon. You can find links to both in the episode notes. Today, in part 2 of my interview with Paulus The Cabaret Geek, we go deep into the bigger implications of cabaret, historically and today. If you haven't done so already, I strongly recommend you go back and listen to part 1. Check out the episode notes to find out more about Paulus and the history of cabaret. Be sure to stick around to the end of the episode for the big reveal of Paulus singing the song Tribe from the forthcoming Making of Paulus. You won't want to miss it.
My name is from the history of cabaret.
Is it?
And it is, and it's very weird. It won't surprise anybody to hear that my real name is Paul, and I'm now called Paulus. And from a very young age, I would go around to my friend's house, so one particular friend called Michael, and his dad would answer the door, and in this very sort of 1980s English jokey dad, it doesn't make any sense and never explains their weird jokes way, would call me Paulus the Wood Gnome, and then wander off, and Michael would come to the door. And I was like, what is Paulus the Wood? Why am I being called Paulus the Wood Gnome? And he would never explain what it was. And we didn't have the internet back then, so I never found out until recently. And then fast forward like 10 years, and I meet my friend there, Louise, who's directing my current cabaret show and is also a cabaret performer herself. And she does Latin at a posher school than I went to. And she starts calling me Paulus Van Drawless. And I was like, oh, what's that name again? Why? I've never elected to be called this name, but it's coming back again. And then I moved to London and I went to drama school, and I lived with a girl called Becky, and she just started to call me Paulus Martinus. My surname is Martin. And none of these things were brought up by me. I had never tried to sort of make this a thing. It just kept coming back again and again and again when I was sort of 10, 20, 25. And then about, I suppose, 6 or 7 years ago, I read this book by our old Prime Minister, John Major. You remember, though, in the 90s, we had a Prime Minister in the UK who was often caricatured as being grey and only liking to eat peas because he was so dull. His name was John Major. But he wrote a book about the history of music hall, and he wrote it partly because his father was a music hall performer called Tom Major, or sometimes known as Major Tom. And David Bowie got the line "ground control to Major Tom" from seeing an old poster for Tom Major's music hall act. He was a magician. It was a magician and magician's assistant. His second assistant was John Major's mother. They saw it in an old venue, and that's how he came to write the lines "ground control to Major Tom."
So I didn't know that.
Yeah. I read this book about the history of cabaret, and about 6 years ago, I was very bored of my onstage clown. I felt it had run its course, it had done its job, and I liken my old onstage persona as a host, at least, to one of a very eager puppy that wants everybody to love them. And I was very over that as I was turning 40. I was like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. All this pleasing people, I'm done with that. And as I was morphing into Paulus and finding this sort of cat-like, yes, I'm fabulous, no, you can't touch, sort of attitude in contrast, which is what I do when I'm hosting, I came upon this part of the book, which was about a French music hall performer in the late 1800s, around 1880 as well. He used to work both in France and in London, and his name was Paulus.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, it's back again. That name is back again.
That's amazing.
So
what a great story.
Yeah. So I've adopted it from a dead Frenchman.
So 1880, is that when we see the first cabaret?
1881 is the year that Rudolph Salis opened the first Le Chat Noir. Le Chat Noir itself lasted until 1887, but it moved and went up that road to the Montmartre in that time. So even that wasn't the same place. Yeah. And then it does this amazing sort of world tour, sort of like, and then it disappears from Paris, and then cabarets turn up in Hungary, and then there's one over there in Russia, and Belgium, I believe, is part of the history before it settles into the 1920s in German cabaret, or cabaret with a K and two T's on the end, and the sort of Otto Dix inspired aesthetic on the walls. And again, that's very much referred to in the movie of the musical Cabaret as well.
So where do you see cabaret? Well, not now because we're in the pandemic, but where is it being done well besides what you do?
Oh, that's not for me to say that I'm doing it well at all. Not many places. Okay. If I'm completely honest with you. Obviously, I'm based in London, and I have been now for 25 plus years, and so my experience is largely of London and the UK. But I have to say, in spite of that, and having come to the US to teach and try and see what I could of the cabaret scene, performed in Australia and done the same there, Paris, Berlin, Nicaragua. I think the people that are doing it the most true to no fourth wall, a dialogue with the audience, a platform, a dissent from the populist view, the avant-garde, the satirical. I do believe it's in London, and I do believe it's been in London for a couple of decades now. A lot of people don't want to recognize us and have been trying to ignore us for almost 20 years. I've got into enormous arguments with critics and reviewers who 20 years ago were writing articles, when we had things like newspapers and journalists in this country, which we don't anymore really. We're writing articles saying that the cabaret is dead, and I'm writing them an email going, sorry, I just put one on last night and there's another one on tomorrow night. Would you please stop saying that? Why don't you come and see what these people are doing rather than saying, cabaret is dead? There's a huge divide, and this is very particular to America. There's the Great American Songbook. There's the songbook style of cabaret. There's, to put it extremely glibly, people rocking up in their best black dress, singing their favourite songs, or the songs they can sing best, which I don't think of as cabaret. I think maybe that's more of a cafe concert, which is pre-cabaret. And I don't think anybody needs to hear your best song. Most cabaret performers, the really famous cabaret performers, aren't the best vocalists, but they're the best storytellers.
Okay.
Marlene Dietrich, Elaine Stritch, B. Arthur. They are tremendous storytellers.
Really?
Yeah. Google B. Arthur. Google B. Arthur singing or B. Arthur cabaret. Oh my God! Find B. Arthur singing from Golden Girls. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's just shocking. Okay, I didn't know that.
Right? Yeah. So if you find B. Arthur singing Pirate Jenny. One of the things I like to do with my students, especially in drama schools, during the week that I work with them, I play them the same song. I play them a YouTube video of the same song performed by 5 different people. And Pirate Jenny is a very good example, because Pirate Jenny was written by Bertolt Brecht for the Threepenny Opera. And there is a video of Lotte Lenya singing it, who was Brecht's wife and one of the very first people, I believe, to perform, if not the first person to perform that song. There is B. Arthur's version. There is Nina Simone's version, Amanda Palmer's version, and and taking you right up to date, there's Sasha Velour of Drag Race's version, and we watch them all during the week, and we explore how you can make something your own and it be from the same place, the same origin, you know.
Tom Waits, you know, him and his wife, amazing songwriters. And I don't know if you listen to Johnny Cash, but he's covered quite a few of his songs.
I just remembered the name of that song we were talking about earlier. It's Martha.
Martha.
It's Martha,
okay.
Isn't it? Yeah, it is Martha. Yeah.
And that's, you know, and that's what people do with his songs. And you did that with A New Coat of Paint. Yeah, you know, I love that idea of the same song, but making it your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up in Kent, in a very small-minded part of Middle England, in a very small-minded period in our history as well, very white, very conservative, very curtain twitching, and being very camp, very feminine, what people would probably now call queer. I mean, they did then, but not as a positive phrase.
Right.
It wasn't a celebration, that word back then. I didn't want to sing songs for men or boys. I wanted to sing the songs that Bette Midler and Liza Minnelli and Chita Rivera were singing. They were the people, the characters that spoke to me, and they were the songs that spoke to me. And I trained in musical theatre, and a lot of people I meet in cabaret come from the musical theatre slip road. We spend our lives as musical theatre performers being put into little boxes as far as, well, you're a certain weight, so you're the funny best friend, or you're a certain height, and or even though we think you're great, you're too tall to play opposite the leading man here, or, you know, age or sex or sexuality. It's just a tick box exercise. And I know a lot of people that work in the West End, and often, I'm very sorry to say this, but it is true, often, you know, who gets the role in Les Miserables will be down to whether they fit the existing costume or not, as opposed to whether they are better than the other person left in the final tournette. And that's business, and that's commerce, and that's the way the world is. But with cabaret, none of that matters. And often I think people are attracted to our world from musical theatre, but not just musical theatre, because we celebrate the different, we celebrate the diverse, and we celebrate the freak. We let our freak flag fly.
So is it possible that all of that is a distinctive characteristic of cabaret, is that it is going to ruffle the feathers of the mainstream, and therefore the mainstream are going to criticize it? So it almost seems to me that, from what you've explained to me, which you've really covered a lot and explained it very well, is that if the mainstream, or whatever, you know, that the politicians or whatever, Simon Cowell, if they're criticizing it, then that means that it's cabaret.
Yeah, my work here is done. Yeah, I think what's angering is that there was a suggestion that the quality of what we're doing isn't good enough, whereas in fact it's the content, I think, that most naysayers have an issue with. You know, to have the balls to stick your head above the parapet and say, I don't agree with that, or I don't want to wear that super dry outfit that everybody else is wearing, or I'm not going to be a masculine male because I was born with a penis. You know, I don't have any desire to have my penis taken away, but nor do I have any desire to act like a bloke is supposed to act all the time. I mean, who's the one that's living in a cage here? If we're dissenting, again, I use that word very deliberately, from the majority, and there's something that you want to say which is going to be a bit of a fly in the ointment, then you can stay on Twitter and do it anonymously and hide behind your screen, or you could put on a lash and stand in a spotlight and own in front of people who know who you are, and have the right to reply, because there won't be a fourth wall between you and them.
That's brilliant. Well, you know, so George Floyd, I think you probably are aware of the
Yeah.
evolution after his murder by police officers. Somehow I'm getting back to everything that we're talking about, and I hope I can meander back there. As a white woman who grew up, my father was a police officer, and
Right.
I grew up in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, which was a very white community. My father was racist, and I do remember him yelling at the TV and raising his fists, and I would go in the corner and cry because there was so much hatred coming out of him.
Mhm.
And so I thought, well, that means that I'm not racist. And what I discovered after this I mean, how many times do we have to be reminded of how racist our society is? I mean, it's all rooted also in slavery. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't recover from that. And so there's something about this last go around that really made me uncomfortable because there's a part of me that when people are saying, oh, systemic racism, blah, 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 for some reason it punctured into that racist part of me this last time. And it was really uncomfortable. And I knew that I had to be in the discomfort and own that. The discomfort that people feel as a result of it, that is a really good place to start with yourself to become a more authentic person, I think, is looking inside of ourselves and seeing, my best friend is a gay man who's, married to a lovely man, Paul, and Paul always talks about his homophobia. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so,
Internal homophobia. Absolutely. Yeah.
so
Internalized homophobia.
yeah, and I don't
Sorry.
think it's about not being one or the other, but it's for me, the place that is going to help me to grow is to be in that discomfort. And it seems like cabaret offers that in a lot of ways.
Well, again, going right back to Paris in the 1880s, the person who was the owner or the proprietor or the manager was often the MC and the host on the stage for a lot of these shows partly because of financial reasons, you can't afford to pay a separate compere. So people like Rudolph Salis and Aristide Bruant after him, who turned Le Chat Noir into Le Militant, they were extremely rude to their customers. And the richer the customer, or the more famous or the more gentrified the customer, the ruder they were to them on entry. And people thought that it was a joke. And, it's very well documented that it wasn't really a joke. There was a tremendous amount of disdain because, again, going back to, I really should have chosen 1881 as my year. Going back right there, the cabarets were firstly and foremostly for the artists to gather and share ideas and opinions and creations. And then it started to quickly be opened up to people who were fascinated by these people of different opinion. And of course, what you never really know is whether somebody's showing up because they're fascinated by your difference of opinion and are interested in learning, or whether they've just come to point and laugh at the monkey in the cage. And you never know which that's going to be to this day when you step out on a stage of a variety show, a cabaret, a burlesque show. I certainly don't anyway. But speaking to discomfort and what's going on in both yours and my country as far as Black Lives Matter, we were also having an enormous conversation about women and women's voices and being better represented and the pay gap and all of that. In January this year, I began a podcast of my own, which is called Up Your Arts. And it's a 45-minute conversation, which I co-host with a woman, Emily, who is a burlesque teacher. And she employs me to host her cabaret show as well. And a guest. And that guest might be a stand-up comic or a burlesque dancer or a fire eater or what have you. And embarking upon being the middle-aged white man in almost all of those conversations, and being well aware that the only thing I had on my side is the fact that I'm gay. I mean, otherwise, the permission to speak, there's almost it is not our time. It is not the middle-aged white man's time to speak.
Right.
It is the time for other people to speak, and the fact that I am queer proudly queer and different is, I think, the only reason why I am still hosting things and sharing things and comparing things. And if I can move forward giving a spotlight and a platform to people who don't feel that their voice is being heard, or that feel they are mis or underrepresented, and I can use, I guess, my power, being a white middle-aged man, for that kind of good, then there's something really promising about my potential future as a cabaret host and facilitator. And I just want to keep an eye on making sure that other people have the say, you know, and get the spotlight. You were speaking earlier on about the future and about how cabaret may shape it. And, you know, we've already lost tremendously old, tremendously well-loved theatres up and down this country, and we're going to lose a lot more. They are stunningly beautiful, historical buildings with hundreds of years of theatrical history in them, and our government could not care a shit. It's almost like they wish this had happened earlier. And the lo-fi, easy to throw up in a tent or a basement or a cellar, nomadic, cheap and cheerful, spit and sawdust nature of cabaret, here's the good news, here's the lemonade, could well be the path back to, in part at least, to the arts in this country, and possibly further afield. I don't know, because I'm too busy going, oh my God, that theatre's just closed down.
Oh goodness, that breaks my heart. Well, that's what I love about England. I lived in London in 2012 just for 3 months, but it's all the history everywhere you look.
Great year to be here. That's the Olympics, isn't it?
Yeah, but everything was under construction. When I came, it was before. But it was, yeah, and we were supposed to be coming in May. We were coming for 3 weeks, because my fantasy is to live in England for 3 months out of the year, like I did in 2012. It's a hard thing to figure out, but we were supposed to come in May for 3 weeks, and thank you, COVID. But I started a podcast, so there's my lemonade, I guess.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, that breaks my heart when I hear that, because the history there, that's the thing I love the most. You get off the tube station, Tower Hill, and if you walk the right way, you see a Roman wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's, that's very sad.
Well, they wouldn't allow the building to be bulldozed, because we have listed buildings in the UK. It can be grade 2 listed or grade 1 listed building, and so they're protected. But as far as we talk about theatre being dark when there's no production in it, and the entire theatre industry has been dark for almost entirely dark in the whole of the UK for 6 months.
Yeah.
And just hearing on a daily basis that another one won't reopen, or that pantomime, you know, we have a huge, rich history of pantomime in this country. It's really one of the only places in the world that pantomime happens. And for a lot of theatre venues in the UK, I mean, almost all, I would say, especially regional theatres up and down the country, the money they make on a pantomime will bankroll the rest of the year. So even if you don't like pantomime, and there are a good few people in the country that don't, but you like going to see an Agatha Christie play, or a jukebox musical that's come to your town, or whatever, or a stand-up comedian that you love from the TV or whatever, they've bankrolled, but the pantomime has bankrolled those things that may make a loss. So it's, the knock-on effect is going to be enormous, and it's going to take years and years and years. And I will be very interested to see which practitioners are suddenly keen as mustard to be on a cabaret stage when it's the only stage available to them, because it's the one that can be thrown back up or soon enough. And they already are. People are already performing in cabaret again in London and other parts of the UK as well. And I myself will begin back on stage with my new show about Victoria Wood, who you probably don't know, but she was a huge.
I did a little bit of research
Yeah.
because it was part of my rabbit hole, and I did do a little research. She was a comedian, and she was an entertainer, a singer.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, I've been in love with her since I was 10 when I first saw Victoria on television, and she came to prominence originally in the 70s through a talent competition, not dissimilar to the one I used to judge on. One of the judges said, this is the late 70s on ITV, Channel 3 in our country. One of the judges said of her act, they said, this woman is doing sophisticated cabaret and there's no such thing. So even as far back as the late 70s, we have this history of British television talent judges eschewing the existence or the validity of cabaret as a genre. Well, Victoria Wood went on to be the most beloved entertainer that this country has, arguably, that this country has ever seen. Certainly the most beloved female entertainer this country has ever seen, and probably the most diverse entertainer that this country's ever seen. So I rest my case. So I'm getting back on a cabaret stage with a Perspex glass. This is the irony. There is a fourth wall between me and the audience later this month, because we have to have a piece of Perspex glass between me and them. I just found out today. I'm very sad about it, but it's getting on the stage and doing the show is more important than arguing about a bit of Perspex.
Well, I'm excited to hear that you are getting back on the stage. I'm going to ask the question, where do we see this in pop culture, this history?
I would suggest that you look out for TV and movies that are breaking the fourth wall. And the most famous example, international example, I think at the moment is Deadpool, the Deadpool movies.
Oh,
because
interesting.
That character breaks the fourth wall on a regular basis in both the sequel and the original. Have you had the TV show Fleabag in the US?
I haven't watched it. I hate to admit that because everybody keeps telling me, yeah, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. Okay.
Yeah. So Phoebe Waller-Bridge made this sitcom, I guess, for want of a better phrase, called Fleabag, and she breaks the fourth wall on a regular basis, and she talks directly to the audience. But it's important to note that she was not the first person doing that in this era. There was a person of color. What a surprise! They got overlooked, and a rich white woman got acknowledged instead, called Michaela Cole, and she's amazing. And her first TV show, which isn't her best, the second one's better, but her first TV show, Chewing Gum, that was doing what Fleabag did a couple of years before. So I would just say look out for anything that's breaking the fourth wall, that's talking to you directly, that's inviting a dialogue, and that's saying, I'm a performer. Because if we go right back to the Threepenny Opera and Bertolt Brecht and Pirate Jenny as performed by Brecht's wife Lotte Lenya that I mentioned earlier on, Brechtian theatre is all based around constantly reminding the audience that this is a piece of entertainment and I am a performer here. We see it in Shakespeare with certain characters, not all the characters. And of course, we see it in stand-up comedy all the time. They talk directly to audiences. And pantomime does it loads and loads and loads and loads and loads. So just keep an eye out for that. And it's happening more and more in Hollywood movies and on TV all the time, actually.
Wow. Good answer. Yay. What's the most important thing that you want to leave people with, that you want people to know about cabaret?
I think the opportunity to meet a performer intimately is unique to cabaret. There aren't that many performers who can do it really well. I remember a long time ago, I met up with a mate who we'd gone to the same drama school. He'd gone off and been very, very successful in many, many musicals. I'd gone off and done cabaret almost immediately and never come back from it. And I said to Carl, this friend of mine, I said, because he'd come to see me in a cabaret at a venue I used to promote and put on shows at. And I said to him, well, you should come and do a show with me, or at least guest and come and get up and sing a song. And this man had played Phantom in Phantom of the Opera in the West End. He toured all around the country, all around the world in very famous shows, playing very, very big roles. And he said, darling, I could never do what you do. Not in a million years. I was 15 years into my cabaret career by then, and I'd offered and work to and given work to hundreds of people at that point, many of whom had come from musical theatre, and not once had I heard that reply before. And the acknowledgement that it is a different skill and a scary, raw, a really exposing thing to do as a performer was, I will be forever grateful to Carl for making that abundantly clear to me, because there's a lot of people that think that they can just rock up and show off their voice. It's got very little to do with that. It's sharing an intimate part of yourself. And how often do we get the opportunity to meet a complete stranger in 45 minutes, 2 hours, and go home going, wow, I saw a completely different point of view, a view of the world. Didn't agree with everything they said. They're not the best singer I've ever heard. Some things are downright annoying, but it made me think.
Yeah. Wow.
And there's the power. There's the power.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. It's beautifully put.
Thank you.
Okay, so I do like to give my guests, if they have a platform, which you have a huge platform, you're constantly creating content. I could never keep up with that, like putting out as much content as you have been doing, especially since the pandemic. But what are you doing? What are your projects?
Too much is kind of the answer, and has been for all of my career, really. I wish I could just choose one thing and stick to it. Unfortunately, I'm too much of a magpie. I get too excited about different things. But I'm 45 now, and I feel the need to sort of pare things down a bit and just focus in, at least for a little while, on one thing. And maybe the lack of performing opportunities that are clearly going to be around for a good couple of years because of coronavirus is a reason to finally write that book on how to be a cabaret performer. Certainly for the rest of this year, I'll be giving my 1 hour version of my tribute show to Victoria Wood across the UK, and I think I've got 5 different venues between now and Christmas, so I'll be very happy to get back on stage and do that with my pianist Michael Ralston, and then he'll go off and get busy with the much more talented people that he works with that can't currently do their show, and I'll write the 2-act version and get Jordan Clark to be my accompanist, who's never heard of Victoria Wood because he's too young to be part of the story.
And I did want to ask you about thrift. Are you a thrifter?
I've been working for the last 5 years with a festival called the Festival of Thrift, which is in the northeast of the country, and this year it had to be online, and I hosted the 5-hour live stream of the festival without a script, and that was really great. I learned loads and loads of stuff, a very, very steep learning curve, very fascinating. So I've ended up, because of the festival, of being very aware of waste and the cyclical economy and recycling, or the lack thereof, in this country. And yeah, I'm really into it. I'm looking over at my dressing room table. We have this product. I'm not going to say the name of it, but we have this product in the UK. I wonder if it's if you have. I'm sure you have one similar, if not the same name, for spraying fabrics that you can't put in the washing machine easily, right? To like get out a pongy smell. And a lot of my costumes are handmade, and the one covered in badges is very, very difficult to clean. So this bottle, it's like, I mean, it's so thin now. I think you get 50 mils of it, and it's £3. And there's another bottle going into the world. And I found out that you can make your own from a tiny, tiny bit of concentrated disinfectant with a nice smell to it, and loads of water, and to save yourself £7 and save the planet from another bottle. And my other fabulous thrifty tip, I love this tip, because I have to spend a lot of time in hotels and bed and breakfasts when I'm working. And surprisingly enough, I don't use the shower caps very often. But one of the people at the Festival of the Thrift turned me on to the idea of taking the shower caps home that you get in hotel rooms and using them instead of cling film or saran wrap, I think you might call it, and just to cover plates and bowls of leftovers and stuff, and you can wash it and reuse it like 6-7 times. It's brilliant tip.
So the festival is not just about thrifting like for fashion, it's about thrifting and upcycling. I guess I didn't understand that part of it.
Yeah, it's about sustainability, really. Okay. The right to repair is a big conversation that we have on an annual basis, throughout the year as well, of course, and what businesses are doing or should be doing to be greener themselves. Yeah, it's award-winning, brilliant festival. I'm tremendously proud to be involved with it for the last 5 years.
Thank you. I cannot thank you enough.
It's been really nice to talk to you.
Thank you. I hope I get to meet you someday in person.
Yeah, me too. That would be lovely. Very lovely. Yeah.
Persevere through this COVID thing. And
keep making lemonade.
Keep making lemonade. Yeah, definitely. All right.
All right, Amber.
You take care. Oh, thanks for being here. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Okay, take care.
There you have it. That was my interview with Paulus the Cabaret Geek. For more information about Paulus and Cabaret, be sure to check out our episode notes. And now, without further ado, I leave you with Paulus singing Tribe. Music and lyrics by Paul L. Martin and Jordan Clark. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.
Where's my crew? Where's my tribe? Who are my people? Where do I reside? Hopes and dreams are now tropes and memes, calling out, calling out, calling out. Where's my team? Shirts or skins, stripy or spotted, who begins? I'm the leader, won't you follow me? Echo back, echo back. Back. Even if I knew I belonged to you, how can I approach risking that you'll ghost? Even if I knew of a song for me. What's my sign? What's my rising? Is this the right key? How's my phrasing? For want of making choices, I'm stuck with others' voices calling out, calling out. Even if I knew my life in review, yes, I'd still do me, and you can just do you. But what the hell is that supposed to be? Round hole, square peg, last straw, last leg, first communion wine. I'll confess what's mine. What is mine? What is mine? My crew, where's my tribe? Who are my people? How do I survive? Hopes and dreams are now tropes and memes.